So, what is Title 42 and, what is happening?
So, Title 42 is a public health law that's meant to prevent the spread of communicable diseases across the nation's borders. And in March 2020, the Trump administration implemented the law to help spread the COVID-19 pandemic across the nation's borders, and particularly the Mexican border. And as a result of the implementation of this law, millions of individuals were prevented from coming to the United States and being screened and processed the way they would before the implementation of Title 42. So, in a nutshell, that's what Title 42 is, and that's the effect that it's kind of had on the immigration system up to this point. So, the Biden administration has continued the implementation of Title 42. It's been challenged several times in court, but now it's set to expire finally on May 11th due to the ending of the federally mandated COVID restrictions.
Okay. What are we expecting on, May 11th and after at the southern border?
Yeah, so that's the big question. It's hard to answer because we don't really know what's going to happen, but most people are expecting some sort of influx of migrants coming across the border. It could be a very large influx, and in that case, it may overwhelm the immigration system, or maybe something that's quite manageable and something that the Department of Homeland Security and the Biden administration is going to be able to handle. But what we can expect with the lifting of the restrictions is definitely more migrants coming across the border and sort of a return to the way it was before March 2020, which is typical screening and procedures for those who do come across that simply weren't there since March 2020 for many immigrants.
Gotcha. Since COVID began, there's been a real strain on the immigration system, right? So with Title 42 ending, as you said, it may overwhelm the immigration system. Practically, for our clients, some of whom have been waiting longer than usual to have, their cases adjudicated. What kind of practical effects should we expect on the immigration system once, Title 42 ends?
Yeah, so again, it's hard to predict, but Biden administration and Homeland Security have assured the public that there are enough resources to deal with any sort of new influx that might be coming. So they have dedicated certain resources to this issue. One is certain new screening procedures that are supposed to expedite the process when someone does enter the border. And they've also sent over 1,500 active military personnel to the border to assist with logistical issues Custom and Border Patrol are going to have to encounter. And in addition, they've made certain agreements with other countries to take in certain number of migrants, mainly Mexico, but also some other Central American countries. So they've done this in order to kind of preempt a bigger strain on resources that Homeland Security might feel with a bigger influx. Like, for example, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. They may be impacted. We just simply don't know right now what that impact is going to be.
Gotcha. Are you happy you're on the private sector now instead of the public sector?
I'm happy.
So, if you were still working as a federal prosecutor or working for Homeland Security, what would you be expecting right now?
Yeah, it really depends on where you would be working. Like, for example, federal employees across the southern border can, I think, definitely expect a big influx in obviously the amount of migrants coming across, but the strain on resources is going to be, I think, very real. And that may have ripple effects throughout the country, obviously, because Department of Homeland Security is a very big department. It has various agencies. It has Custom and Border Patrol, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, all kinds of other agencies, including USCIS. So they all might be tasked with assisting with this process if, in fact, there's a truly massive influx that takes place. I think we're already seeing USCIS have to pick up the load in a lot of ways that they may not have had to done in the past. That's going to come with certain screenings across the border if they have to screen, migrants for their asylum claims. Obviously, CBP, they're tasked with patrolling the border. They're going to be tasked with housing and detaining migrants. So all these agencies are certainly, they're already feeling a strain. This is probably going to be a bigger strain. It's just a matter of how big of a additional strain is this going to be on the federal resources.
Understood. So I know that there's talks between both parties to get a law passed. What is the current state? What kind of law are we looking at? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's seems to be some efforts, bipartisan efforts, to extend Title 42 in Congress, but given that we're so close to the deadline, and there doesn't seem to be enough political will to make that happen. So if that doesn't happen, Title 42 looks like it's just going to lapse, and we're going to go back to the pre-pandemic kind of ways. Now, the bigger issue is whether there's going to be some sort of change in the law on the Congress level in terms of comprehensive immigration law change. And that is not really on the horizon at this point. I think that's what the both parties seem to agree on, is that this is a problem that Congress needs to, at some point, surely handle. And the only way we're going to really change the laws is if Congress steps in and overhauls the immigration system. The last time that was done was over 20 or 25 years ago. So we're dealing with laws that are kind of antiquated at this point in a lot of ways, and that really need to be or take into account happenings in the world and just the current place that this country is at.
And it's worth noting that immigration is a very political issue, right? Which makes getting a law passed at the Congress level even more difficult. Could you expand on the likelihood of a comprehensive immigration policy getting passed at the Congress level, especially with the 2024 elections coming up?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really, I think, depends on if both parties are willing to make certain compromises, and I think it depends on also who's in power in both the House and the Senate. At some point, it seems like each party is going to have to give a little bit to get something in return. There's certain priorities that each party has when it comes to immigration, and up until now, those differences have been the sticking point why Congress hasn't been able to really pass anything substantive that's going to overhaul the immigration system and make it more modern, updated, and streamlined. If you were to ask me, I think it's going to come down to both parties having to sit down and really make this the number one priority for them, because there's a lot of other competing priorities in the world right now. But this is going to have to be one of, if not the major priority, and they're going to have to make certain compromises. And so right now, that doesn't seem to be on the horizon, unfortunately.
Thank you for taking the time to address this important issue that's very current, that we're about to face. I appreciate your insight, and I'm sure our audience does as well.